So I wanted to give a little bit of a perspective and reality check on just how impactful AI has truly been, at least to myself, as a developer. Now, to give a little bit of context here, there was a time where everybody wanted you as a developer. It was very easy to get work. There was just this explosion of multiple recruiters reaching out and job offers, and it was a great time to be a developer. And then very quickly, I was seeing on the horizon these changes in the marketplace where there was the a lot of layoffs at Microsoft, layoffs at Google, layoffs that were going to be happening at Twitter, and they all have their different reasons and whatever. And AI was not really the main thing. At least I don't think it was at the time, but it was definitely starting. And I remember it was definitely starting because at the time I was part of a coding boot camp, and I was teaching people how to do development stuff and how to code. And alongside that, I was definitely one of the early adopters of AI, bringing to attention at the time there was this large friction where it was, don't use AI for anything. AI is awful. It really can't code. It's just good for boilerplates and templates, of which at the time was definitely true. But I definitely wanted to bring to attention to the students that this is the future. This is saving you so much time. You should understand what it's doing. You do need to understand the fundamentals of the code so that you can read it. You can understand what these different elements are, how they operate together. But it's naive to just fight the friction. And I've seen this friction when I went back to my old college, where I went to go revisit and see the animation that was going to be produced by the incoming class. And I got to revisit with some of the people that I graduated with and previous alumni and the new students coming in, and we got to have a brief conversation about AI as it relates to art. Now, my background is I wanted to do animation. I got to work on some video game stuff, and I got to be a part of that. But there was also a change in the dynamics of the global situation that I basically ended up venturing off, taught myself how to code, and then went down that path. Always still loving animation and still have a passion for film and all that fun stuff. But at the end of the day, we had this conversation with this group of artists, and they were all artists, many of which were no longer doing art for their professional career, or they were doing art, freelance. But in either case, the point is, we had this discussion about AI, and it was very clear that there was this constant sort of mentality, and it was the same as the developers and engineers, where I was hearing from the artists, oh, it can't replace humans, and it's just this or that, and we're going to still produce better quality. And this mentality of it's not something worth learning, adapting to, evolving into, really making it a part of whatever. And ironically, the more that sort of approach was taken as the months and at this point years have gone on, clearly that was not the case. The understanding of what AI was and where it was going to go, and even where it's at now, was definitely the expectation that it's just a fad, it's not as good as they say, people won't pay for XYZ, whatever. I was very much of the other mentality, which is this is a new part of the arsenal. This is like replacing the paintbrush with Photoshop. You still need to know how to do the fundamentals to make something, useful and beneficial. And also, you don't just want to use this tool and have it do everything for you. You want to know how to use the tool. And I think that's been expressed at this point enough times across enough verticals, whether it be marketing or whether it be a developer, engineers, artists, etc. And you can start to see these splits taking place where even if you were to tell somebody something is produced by AI, they'll rip it apart and tell you why it's inferior and why it clearly is AI, even if it was just a test to see if they really, truly could tell the difference. And with that sort of what I call like AI literacy, I can see different verticals, different groups have been able to identify within their chosen field what is more AI looking, what is not, and then also essentially what's valuable AI output and what is invaluable. I suppose not invaluable, but what is less valuable AI output. So why do I bring all of this complexity up and this whole little narrative going on? Well, because one thing that I've found is some of the people that are using it the best, that are taking the most advantage out of it, are not necessarily the most technically savvy. I have come across people that still understand you have to continually learn, and with that mentality they are learning about how to use these tools specifically for their field to do something that is part of their daily task, part of the something that they do that can definitely be automated. Now, from my background, I've always wanted to try and automate as much as I can for myself or a group to make things easier. And I've done that before in, more like automated processes where we're using APIs and we're using triggers so that things kind of move through a pipeline, if you will, automatically, really cutting down the manual input time, the manual processes that are involved just to navigate something. But the AI is really becoming this thing that, in the same way, the expectation is you should know how to type on a keyboard. When you're going to be writing a lot on the computer, that's kind of becoming the new thing, that you understand the basics of how Microsoft Word operates, that you can save a file, that you can do bold and paragraphs and that sort of basic building blocks kind of thing. That, I think, that sort of basic literacy and expectations is being set up for AI right now, where regardless of what field you're in or operating in, you're either on your own or through your employer, you're going to start to find additional education just for the understanding of what this is. And some of it's just simply going to be exposure. In the same way that when the internet first came out, I remember when the internet first came out that I was on a computer and I didn't understand the concept of a URL. So essentially, if I wanted to look up video games, it's videogames.com, right? Everything was just insert noun.com, right? So starwars.com, right? And the idea of like a search engine almost seemed like an extra waste of time, an extra step. Why would I type it in there when I could just type it inside this bar at the top? And then obviously over time, and as this became the new norm, the logic of, oh, I understand what this search engine is meant for, why it does, why it exists. And there was initially like a preference as far as the interface. There was a preference for Yahoo over Google. Way more cool things going on over on Yahoo. A lot of links and images and what felt like stuff was alive versus Google. It's just a blank field. I need to be navigated. I need to be handheld to navigate the internet or to find these, news sites or whatever. So I think there's a little bit of that going on. We're in this sort of very early stage where the understanding that you're going to be using these tools is kind of understood. But a lot of us are like myself, where we're just typing things into the URL and not fully understanding that you're doing it the wrong way. And we don't even understand that these things like agents, what does that actually mean when we say the word agents? Agentic commerce, what does that even mean? And I think increasingly so, the expectation is going to be that we have these sort of personal agents. I kind of think of them like Pokemon, where if you think about like Pokemon, where they kind of have you have like Ash Ketchum, and he's got like his Pikachu that just like, is alongside him wherever he goes. In the same way, those abilities of like he technically has access to electricity, right? And so if there's little jobs along the way, that assistant, if you will, that Pokemon can go ahead and do that little task for him, that little side quest mission for him. And I could see a little bit of like agentic commerce, agentic future going along those lines. And the personalization and how good these sort of side characters are for ourselves is going to slowly be influenced. I don't want to say influenced, but a little more custom made and personalized based on how well we understand and provide the information for our little assistant, if that makes sense. So, anyways, before I get into like a longer tangent, that's just something that real quickly I wanted to throw out as an idea, something I'm kind of seeing regardless of the vertical, whether it's in the art field or whether it's in marketing. There's so much across these different verticals, and I can't keep track of all of it. I'm only keeping track of what I need to make myself more productive in what I have to do on a daily basis. So anyways, those are just some random thoughts thrown out there. Thank you for your time. Have a nice day.